And I'm back with more Apollo Justice. It's time to talk to a dude about some stuff. And he's a journalist. Yeah, it's that dude. The witness will state his name and occupation. Alright. Well, for starters, my name's Spark Brushel. My job is the lone observer of the world. In other words, a freelance journalist, right? Ahem. If you don't mind, I'd like to state something here for the record. Yes, Mr. Brushel. I dislike conclusions, specifically the aspect of jumping to conclusions. Preconceptions make park sandbox of endless desert waste, end quote. But you're a journalist. You said so yourself yesterday. You said so yourself yesterday. Well, it's true, yes. But you must understand, I stand before you today, a man with a dream. I'm offering you my testimony in exchange for exclusive rights to the story. Scoop turns Mr. Brushel into that Mr. Brushel, end quote. Let's hear your testimony then, shall we? Simple case, huh, Gavin? For me, the jury is still out. This guy's weird, so weird. I visited the studio around 9 that night to do the interview. The first outsider to enter the atelier. Journalistic history made, end quote. His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. And you know what happened next? Star falls, end quote. No one else entered the room besides her the whole time. That does sound like a simple case. Unless you were the one who poisoned him. What? What are you saying, Judge? Need I remind you the cameras are rolling today? I felt the need to be a bit dramatic. You didn't do it, did you? Me do a thing like that? Come on, that's like newsmakers making the news, end quote. Or even contemporary witch hunt, end quote. Wild accusations rock courtroom, end quote. Rock indeed. Prosecutor Gavin sure looks like he's having fun. I'm so happy for him. Very well, Mr. Justice, your cross-examination, please. Oh man, this is gonna get so weird. What's this about a star falling? Star falls, huh? It's like an old telegram. Send money, over. Zowie, you don't know? That's like a journalism code word. An important personage passes away. A star falls, get it? But there's no gravity in space, is there? I wouldn't think stars would fall, really. Does that matter? Oh boy. This is good stuff, good stuff. How about star breaks? Wax punch. I know. Star dies? Oh, wax imagination. Of course, you could go with Drew dies. Straight to the point. I like it. I think we need to hear him a little bit more substantial. You say Mr. Misham had the coffee too? But did you actually see him drink the coffee? Of course! He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger, end quote. I live in a dog sees dog eat man world. I live in a man sees dog eat dog and writes about it world. Yet? I guess I can't say I saw him drink it, really. He had one sip, if that. Man puts lips to mug, drinks? End quote. That poison is quite virulent, I hear. My stomach did a so-called somersault. Since I gulped it down with coffee so much with a second glance at it. Wait, maybe something's there. Some kind of so-called trick. Anyone who ventures a guess, for the record? Does this guy have a pause button? Well, Mr. Justice, do you find the testimony valuable? The victim drank his coffee, then immediately fell over? Oh, yeah, you can go to the press with that one. Your Honor, this is a vital piece of testimony. Add it to testimony. Well, yes, add it to the thing I keep saying. Vital, right, just like my nose twitch. Okay.
Objection!
You know what I have a problem with? A particular property of that poison used, the atrocinine. Oh, Prosecutor Gavin was quite clear about that poison. Lethal dose is blah 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 and paralyzes the central nervous system. If you drank that, even you, Mr. Justice, would be reduced to a quivering pile. Were you using me as the example? Unfortunately, we weren't told everything. There was a vital omission in his information. An omission? Atrocinine is as virulent as he says, but death doesn't come ingestion, or not immediately. That's because atrocinine is slow acting. Slow acting, well, huh? According to one forensic scientist. The best forensic scientist. In her own opinion, of course. If we suppose the moment Dr. Misham sipped the coffee was when he sealed his fate, and he would still have had time left to enjoy his last cup of joe! My god, he is as lanky as he is weird. Ugh. Order! Order! What's the meaning of this? If what the defense says is correct, why, that contradicts the entire testimony! Well, Mr. Brushel, anything to say? On the record? Slow acting. Slow act. It was virulent, alright. Even then, it had already been digging its claws into the journalist. He's working on his scoop.
Objection! It's
Brushel, yeah? Herr Brushel? Let's take a trip down memory lane. Huh? Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital. You know what I think? I think that was a not-so-subliminal suggestion, end quote. I admit, it does cause a problem if he dies when you say he died. I would be forced to say, auf Wiedersehen, to my simple case. And you would be forced to say farewell to your article. Come again? You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? And as the case drags on, other reporters will pick up the scent. And you will be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye. Scoop? 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 Look, wait, just a sec. Just 1 second. We're waiting. Out with it! I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. A revival of recollection. A survival story, end quote. Attorney utterly confused, end quote. Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I heard of poison that tasted sweet thyme. But not what I've been saying for the last few minutes, apparently. Mr. Brushel, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened? You bet I am. The antidote for a poisonous contradiction, you might say. I still have no idea what you're talking about, end quote. I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. And see, thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee. Order! As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony that Mr. Misham died the instant after he drank. Of course I'm standing by my testimony. and my dream of exclusive rights to said story. Suppose it was too much to hope for. What was? Of course he wouldn't choose a simple case. Not him. Him? Phoenix Wright, who else? Attune, Herr Brushel. Report for us, if you would. What is it that you noticed? That smile. No, I'm not going to make that noise again. This court is a critical trial of the jurist system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed. When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Mission was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. But now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note? No. Suicide note? I mean, he had this look on his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation, end quote. Suicide? Poor Mr. Misham. He's very innocent. Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview? I mean, I remember a story about this dude who shot himself with a gun live in public as a demonstration, like at a press conference. It was very weird. So, I mean, you can't predict people, but I don't think that's it. Oh. Very well, you may begin your cross-examination. Press on... Hold it! So he put the letter away when he saw you? Early reporter gets the worm, end quote. That's my secret. I'm not sure I follow. It was the night of the interview. I arrived 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the door opens, and I barge in. Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, that's unlawful entry, really. Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into that yellow envelope as fast as he could. I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one. It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice, I wonder. It does have the ring of something important. Yellow envelope, huh? The defense find this testimony vital. Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge. Objection! As it just so happens, there was a single letter in the desk drawer at the scene. In a red envelope. Sometimes I just make noises. Prosecutor Gavin. Yes? Was a yellow envelope at the scene of the crime? Unfortunately, no. But Herr Forehead, it's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess, but not this one. You see, it was postmarked already. 7 years ago. Well, Mr. Brushel, I can explain that. Drew, right? He wanted to get that letter into an envelope pronto. Get it out of my sight, of my beady eyes, right? So he grabbed the nearest one and crammed away. What about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump? Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim? That night, the victim put the letter in a red envelope. Yeah. That's impossible. I like your expression. It's so full of confidence. It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of the envelope. with the insistence of a forensic scientist. Huh? Now that this letter has been addressed to... or note that it's been addressed to Drew Misham. Huh? Why would he address a letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself. I've been scoped! Order! Order! Mr. Brushel, can you explain this? Oh my, how could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots, end quote. I'm still waiting for an explanation. Well, that's the thing, see? If he puts his letter in that envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. His desk drawer? A stamp! A so-called postage stamp, end quote. A stamp? Whatever for? Well, to mail his letter, what else? And then, why yeah, I think I saw him put it in the letterbox. It was a yellow envelope, and he put it in that box. Well, apparently this yellow letter... Oh, how I wish it did! Just think as it were a suicide note. What a story! Star writes suicide note in front of reporter. Falls, end quote. As I was saying, this has nothing to do with this case. That said, it makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope. $100,000 is quite a good deal of money. So this was 7 years ago, yeah? So, am I finished here? Am I finished here? I was thinking of going home and start writing. I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the scent of a story, you make that rather unique face. Come on! Attorney has active imagination, little else, end quote. Even I noticed something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. You know, I'm starting to understand what all this perceiving stuff is about. A judge has an active imagination, end quote. Please continue with your testimony. Tell us about the scent of a story. I'm the one who should be asking questions here, usually. Do I even want to ask? Like, I brush my glass rims to cut the residue, but I don't actually brush my glasses with brushes that I've just brushed my tongue. This guy, Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on that interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare. So you threatened to go to press with the story? That's how you got your interview. Blackmail? Well, yeah. I mean, no. It exactly wasn't. Something wrong, Mr. Brushel? Look, this is my story, my tidbit. Journalist's info is livelihood, end quote. I see. While you have me chatting away, what's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could be going to the press while I'm going to waste. The court feels your pain. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace. Certain case. So wait, 7 years ago. Huh? Let me see if I can get this right. perceive on truth. Oh, okay. So perceive on that. Move to that. Okay.
Gotcha!
Ew! Ew! Ew. Dude. Sweat mush, Mr. Brushel? Oh, well. A man can't help his glands, you know. It's more than that. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly began to sweat buckets. You were hiding something about his talent. What? It's ridiculous. Evidence time. Let's show Mr. Misham's true talent lay. It just so happens I have evidence showing this talent mentioned in the letter.
Take that!
This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. First is it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is there was another painting in the studio which looked exactly like this one, except it was half done. Then we have a letter discussing payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries. He's turning into Earthworm Jim. I think that's what he looks like right now. Or he's twisting Earthworm Jim as his tie. I don't know. That is all, Your Honor. I don't know what he's doing. This guy's weird. Everyone, please, everyone, can we keep this private? Please? This is my story, my scoop. Forgery, that's a serious crime. Drew Missum is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back. Another art meaning forgery? Drew Missum was talented, all right. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. The fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover. Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about... Exactly! I'm talking about forging evidence! The rumors started circulating 7 years ago. 7 years ago? So are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000? Exactly. Forged evidence nets tidy profit, end quote. Just like how tight my tiny tie gets. Order. It's like our victim was living a double life. This is my chance. So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about. This is my first time hearing about this criminal world. Certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation. But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here. But there's no proof tying this letter to this case. Our case was, and remains, simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course. Hey! The only thing I poisoned is my pen when I'm writing reviews. Mr. Brushel, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting. What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. So solid, you could stand an elephant on it. End quote. any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in the studio from the recap, this trial is over. Apollo, what's he talking about? The cross-examination showed he doesn't have any reason or means to poison him. So long as there's no other suspects, then the killer has to be Vera, that's what. The next testimony is our last chance. Mr. Brushel, your testimony, please. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poisoned the coffee. She admitted as much herself. Or poured the coffee, not poisoned it. Whoops, that would be a big difference. She poured it. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interviews was that mud. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing! Clearly the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. A nice testimony. Clear, succinct, and without room for doubt. Aw, shucks. You really think so? I believe that clarifies the situation. Very well, Mr. Justice, you may begin your final cross-examination. I still have one trump card to play, and I won't let this trial end until I use it. Not one thing? You're sure? Yep, sure I sure can be. Well, with one exception. One exception? What? Journalist Spark Brushel does interview, leaves studio. Come on! It's a joke. Get it? Not funny, I know, but still. Did something leave the studio that night? Why does this sound familiar? Where have I heard this before? Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio? I think one thing might have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that's vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean something other than our witness. Of course. Don't tell me. Vera Mission? Believe me, any comic relief I provide is entirely unintentional. Well, let's see what you've got. The thing that wasn't at the scene of the crime, I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken. This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox. What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Oh, but that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night, the yellow envelope disappeared. Oh yeah, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Mission. Is it really important that this envelope, the witness says, has disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. It seems very important to me. Very well, the witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to change anything here, Forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. Letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for. Press on anything.
Hold
You're sure about that? Well, to be really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time. One of those candies might have been poisoned.
Objection!
Yet at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room. And no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee? Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof, possibility is there. I can feel it. I'm gonna prove it. The possibility isn't gonna cut it now. He ingested poison via a route other than the coffee. Proof is possible. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. You do understand what we need, yeah? Proof, therefore, and not possibility. Of course. And Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. What did you say? I have proof of a disappearing envelope. I saw him writing a letter, I did! Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume. Of course, which means that envelope has a stamp on it. A stamp? Huh? As you know, stamps come with dry glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp.
Objection!
No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age. Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all. Okay, so he licked the stamp, but wait. How does that explain the atrocanine on the rim of the coffee?
Objection!
If he licked the back of a poisoned stamp, the poison would have gotten to his tongue, yes? What would happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth? Huh? Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? Coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Misham. Mr. Misham poisoned the coffee mug himself! Order! 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 But that doesn't... Does it? Recall, if you would. Atrocanine is a slow-acting poison, yes? Poison entered his body when he put the stamp to the envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched the lips with the cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? Uh-oh, his noise is picking up another scent. As I believe I mentioned earlier... But you know, I don't seem to remember even finding one. Maybe he just run out? Incidentally, we searched his desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps. Not a single one. Huh? That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say. Where's your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp?
Take that!
Well, that certainly is a cute little frame, and by little, I mean very little. It was on your victim's It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection, so what? Apparently you weren't as observant as I thought you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? A pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. A truncanine residue! What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most. You weren't saying... Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order! 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 The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible! Prosecutor Gavin? Why would he put something like that on his desk? But don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see? What, Mr. Brushel, and stop jittering about like that! The victim was a forger, right? There was a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies too. So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him!
Objection!
Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the Governor's song lyrics, please. Finally something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? It's nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again. Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail? Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, with your new red letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon! Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof! Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon! I might not have the evidence per se, but things are finally starting to come together. Oh, what is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. Certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Majesty. Your Honor. I was watching ReFantasia before this. God damn it! Your Honor. I can show you something with the intent to kill.
Take that!
Red envelope. Huh. Isn't this the envelope from 7 years ago? Think about it, and the text from the letter again. There were 2 pages on it. This is page 1. And this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp? Huh? In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp! Poison! On the stamp! Lick, lip, gasp! End quote. Now what if he'd done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign the document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in the letterbox. 15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently thanks to the postal system. Such a splendid imagination you have there, Herr Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So this poison stamp was inside the envelope from 7 years ago? Is that what you have us believe? Really? Well, it is a little bit of a stretch, but there is a possibility. A very small one. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope? A stamp that then became a murder weapon? How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well, not even 7 years ago. You don't even know who sent it. And your answer is silence. I see. Very well, I move to... Huh? Wait, what? Who said that? Oh! Whoa, why did it... Fucking hell. I saw Kristoff for a second. Emma! Well, like my Kristoff Gavin impression? Did I sound just like him? Don't quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fräulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you out of all this mess you've been making. Mess? You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted science a bit more. You can find out if that stamp was in the envelope easy. Care to explain yourself? Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right? That's right. Poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it on the authority of this court. Ooh. Well, would you look at that? No mistaking it. It's atrocanine residue. I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last. That was poetic. Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Misham figured it out. Figured what out? He realized that the person who sent the letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp. And put his decisive evidence in a frame? You're still here? Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Razortooth Brushel, claim this scoop is mine. Drew Misham killed in cold blood. By sender of 7-year-old letter. Well, something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay. End quote. Order! I see no room for further argument. Though I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon would reach his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket to the afterlife, end quote. Uh-oh, I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge. I see no further debate on this matter. The sender of this letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant. Apollo? I think we just won. Very well, this court finds that... Uh-oh. Is this the bright future for our legal system? Prosecutor Gavin? A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago? Tickets for Gaviner's shows are invalid after 2 weeks. Well, it doesn't make any sense any other way. It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in Herr Forehead's claim. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did? Emma explained that. He must have realized it was poisoned. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger sensed a trap, put a stamp in a frame. I don't debate this, but this begs the question. Why, 7 years later, did he use the stamp on the night of the murder? Oh! Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot. He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprung the trap on himself? Oh! That was delayed. While I admit this is all quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely he would fall foul to a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo, I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you. Okay, but then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in the envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? I see no proof that such a thing existed. What about the otrocanine residue? Oh, I agree. That does seem to be the residue. But your forehead, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham wouldn't have used it. That is all. I believe we've come to a conclusion again. Apollo? Were we wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. Poison traces match up. It can't be coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year, Mr. Justice. Yes, Your Honor? Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison otrocanine on the document inside the envelope. Similar trace was also found at the crime scene, on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope, an envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poison stamp on it. But even if this envelope contained the poison stamp, and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used the stamp. I'm afraid you're right, which means there's a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time. I'm sure of it. The traces of otrocanine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case. We've seen that the logical outcome of this evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. A fake clue? Fascinating. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? Fake clue that threw us off this poison trail is none other than... The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That'll make sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself. Congratulations, you've completely lost me. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger? Well, it makes a good story, I'll give you that. Fake clue. Thanks. Forgeries. Wait! I know that face. It's the I just got an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? Come again? 7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into the same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we go again. The victim was a fake. One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into it. That's 2 forgers, and one of them was a fake. Order! 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 So you're telling us that Drew Misham was a fake? Well, if he was the fake, who was the real one? You better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo. I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who was the real Drew Misham. If he wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood. Forger Drew Misham was himself a forgery. The real forger was...
Take that!
There can only be one explanation. The real identity of the forger known as Drew Misham is none other than his only daughter, Vera Misham. Order! 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 Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb even for you. I kind of agree. I mean, Vera a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off completely. If you look at the paintings in a studio, one fact becomes clear. Forgery had been taking place in the studio for quite some time. The forgery wasn't caught in a trap 7 years ago. It can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger. Well, actually, that does make a certain kind of sense. One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham and Vera Misham's. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Misham. Fascinating. Uh-oh. Vera Misham. You've been paying attention to the trial so far. Let's just ask her name. Well, let's just ask her and be done with it, will you? Who are you? Who is the forger, Drew Misham? Uh-oh. Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into his Professor Gavin's face. Or Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to be stared at by Fräuleins, believe me. Though they usually talk to me, too. Tell us, were you the one who forged the works of art? Yes. Huh? So, the forger Drew Misham was you? Yes, it was me. What? Oh boy. Things are getting interesting. The court was in an uproar and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. We're not done yet. Oh jeez. Oh, that was a long section. Okay. We're gonna take one more break, and then we'll get to this next bit. So, I'll see you in the next episode.